In this lesson, we are going to discuss classes. Apple defines classes and structures, which we'll cover later, as follows. Classes and structures are general-purpose, flexible constructs that become the building blocks of your program's code. You define properties and methods to add functionality to your classes and structures by using the already familiar syntax of constants, variables, and functions. All right, so it's a building block of our code, and we are going to use our things that we're already familiar with, constants, variables, and functions. The classic example of a class is that of a blueprint. Now, if you're not familiar with what a blueprint is, it is a reproduction of a technical drawing or architectural plan or an engineering design. It allows for rapid and accurate production of an unlimited number of copies. And when we create a copy of our class, or in other words, we use that blueprint to create one of those unlimited number of copies, we call the resulting copy an object or an instance of that class. So our class blueprint holds the information for what properties it should hold and what functions it can perform. You can look at almost any object around you and find an example of a class object. Did you drive a car today? Well, at one point, that car was a blueprint. Then from that blueprint, lots of copies were made from it. So what would the properties of a car be? We could have color, wheels, make, model, etc. And what about its functions? What can it do? How about drive, stop, turn? Hey, we just built our first class. Now let's take a look at this syntax in a Swift playground. So go ahead and open up a new playground, iOS, and we're going to go with blank and say next. And I'm going to call this classes cars, and we're going to say create. All right, so we have our playground here. Going to get rid of that string right there. All right, so let's talk about the syntax or the rules for how you compose a class. First off, all we do is say class, and then we give the class a name, and let's continue using our car example. So I'm just going to name the class car. And it is common practice to use camel case, but with the first letter also capitalized, and this is called Pascal case, okay? So camel case is where the first letter is lowercase, and then the following words are capitalized. Pascal case is where all of the first letters of each word is capitalized, okay? So we say class, car, and then curly braces. So we have declared our first class. Now we need it to have properties, right? So when we were talking about our car, we said that it had things like color and number of wheels and make and model. So let's go ahead and see how we do that. Well, just like Apple said, we're going to keep using those things that we've already learned and that are familiar to us, variables and constants and functions. So let's go ahead and create some properties here. Let's say var color equal to, and we'll just initialize it with an empty string. Then we can say var wheels, and we can initialize that to 0. We can say var make is equal to an empty string, and var model is equal to an empty string. So now how about those capabilities that the car has, those functions? When a function is in a class, we call it a method. Methods are functions that are associated with an instance of a class or structure. So methods still work the exact same way as functions, though. They are still encapsulated bits of code we will call. So we could say something like func drive, and then we have our parentheses and our curly braces, and we could say print room. And then we have func break, and we say stop, and then down here we have func turn, and then whatever code was required for turning. Okay, so we have our car class. We've given it some properties and some methods. So if this is just the blueprint, how do we create some instances or objects from it? How do we take this blueprint to the factory and get us some cars? All right, so that's really easy. All we do is we say let car equal, and then we say car, and we use the default empty initializers, which is just a open and close parentheses, okay? So now we have here an instance or an object from our car class. And we can go ahead and set these properties if we want. We can say car dot, and then you can see here we have functions, brake, color, and drive. And then we have the properties here, and these are called stored properties. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between stored properties and computed properties. All right, so we have make, model, and wheels. We could go ahead and give it a color here. So let's say car.color is equal to red. Okay, and so we are able to call the instance of the car, get the property, and set it. And then we can say car.wheels is equal to 4. And if we wanted to call one of those methods, we say car.drive. And then if we run this, let's go ahead and click right here. Then you see printed out here, vroom. Okay, so that is the very basics of a class. We covered conceptually what a class is, how to declare one and provide properties, and how to initialize an instance or object from a class. In the next lesson, we will take a look at different ways to initialize the class. I'll see you then.